It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My next guest, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. I talked with her in 2013. Of course, Julia played Elaine on Seinfeld, one of the greatest TV comedies of all time. She's since gone on to star in another of the greatest TV comedies of all time, Veep. On Veep, Julia plays Selina Meyer, the vice president who became the president, then lost her re-election bid. Now, as we're kicking off the show's 6th season, she's a private citizen for the first time in decades. Like pretty much every character on Veep, Selina is obsessed with her career. She doesn't seem to really like the people around her. She keeps aiming higher, but time and time again she falls short of glory. And maybe it's going too far to say that makes her lovable, but there's definitely something relatable there, right? Anyway, last season, Meyer's run for president ended in a close call with everything hinging on a recount in Nevada. In this scene, she just got some bad news.
What?
The new votes are tilting heavily toward O'Brien. Apparently, most of them are military absentees.
Of course, Fort Dutton. It all makes sense.
No. That doesn't make any sense. Nevada is my state. I'm going to be president. I'm going to be the first elected lady president. I'm going to have a lovely inauguration. Billy Joel is going to sing. So you guys have to stop the recount.
I'm sorry, what?
Stop the count.
Right.
Shut up, Gary. Ma'am, we can't.
I don't care.
The train has very publicly left the station and derailed at high speed.
No, yeah, stop the count.
Ma'am, this would look like a size 14 flip-flop. We really can't.
I don't give a You're going to cancel this recount like Anne Frank's bat mitzvah.
Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah.
I'm tired of losing things!
Julia Louis-Dreyfus, welcome to Bullseye. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's really cool to be here.
It's one of the things I really love about Veep is how enthusiastically every character on the show turns everything to self-interest immediately. Like within the course of a sentence, things transform from sincere interest in others to a sort of venal grab for power.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? None more so, I would say, than Selina, but yeah, ultimately they're serving sort of her staff. Selina's staff is serving her in an effort to move on from her, I would say. Yeah.
There's an interesting line you have to walk in playing this character. Obviously, part of what's funny about the show is things going wrong. You know, partly the show is a farce about what a disaster Washington is. Mm-hmm. But partly also, you're the vice president, and people don't become the vice president for no reason at all.
Right.
And so you have to find a way to be both competent enough to have become next in line to the presidency and also disastrous enough for the show to be funny.
Yeah, it is a tricky line. It's funny that you say that because when we first started the show, you know, in fact, when Armando, who's the Iannucci, who's the creator and executive producer of the show, and the genius behind the show, the voice, he's running the whole deal. And when he and I first spoke about the show and this character, we talked about how we didn't want her to be just a bumbling idiot, which is an easy place to go, and you could definitely make that funny. But it's the easiest way to go. Now, she does trip over words and so on and so forth, but there's another layer in there as well. And I like to think of that kind of, when she does screw up, using a word incorrectly or whatever it happens to be, I think of it as sort of a paralysis that sets in, whose roots are really about frustration. Her frustration is so profound, and I completely understand that. And certainly for myself, when I get livid, it's very difficult for me to find language. And so, but yeah, it's a tricky line, and I hope that we walk it well. We're trying to anyway.
But before you started the show, you talked to a couple of vice presidents. I know one of them was Al Gore. I don't know any other, if you're allowed to say any other vice presidents you may have spoken with.
Well, I've subsequently spoken with Joe Biden, and I did speak with others, but I'm not allowed to say.
Okay.
Otherwise, I will be executed, I think.
Well, I mean, I think we know that you hang out with Cheney just regularly anyway, right?
Yeah, he's a good bud.
So did you learn anything from them that you didn't expect? I mean, I'm sure you've spent part of your time as an activist, and you've also been a famous person for 15, 20 years. I'm sure you've met politicians, but were there things about their life that you didn't expect that you learned from them?
Well, sort of generally, I would say that there was confirmation for me that these people are just regular people. And even though you kind of know that, it is astounding to see it. And I would say that that's, you do know it, but, then when they talk about the realities of what it's like to have Secret Service in the car when you're having a private conversation with your kids or your wife or whatever that, what that's like, or the frustrations of the position, and they can be real, and understandably so. But it's amazing to hear it from somebody who's lived it and who is, we think of these people they're on pedestals. They are for me anyway. I have the utmost respect for people who are in government and in the executive branch or, in Congress or whatever. It is amazing what they do. But to hear about the frustrations of that, whatever the position happens to be, the level of devotion, certain levels of incompetence, it's just folks working hard at a job.
All of those things that you just said about public servants,
yeah,
in my mind, I could also apply to people who were on Seinfeld. And I wonder if maybe the public servants are doing work that's a little bit more important, but I wonder if you can relate to the weird ways that your life changed when you were all of a sudden like a famous person.
Well, you see, there's so many parallels between the entertainment business and the business of politics, the political world. And I definitely draw on that. But you need to understand that I'm famous, but I don't walk around thinking I'm so famous. Everybody knows me. This is not it doesn't occur to me. I'm just living my life. But there are certain realities about being known when you walk down the street.
Well, there's just this. For example, there's this thing that that your character on Veep does, which is she gets into a weird social interaction with someone that she doesn't know at an event or whatever. There's an episode where you go to a pork industry event.
Yes.
It's a pig roast and are having all these weird, awkward interactions with people.
Right.
And just from time to time, you see a moment in the conversation where your character is lost, or not as in can't follow, but just doesn't know where to go. And you just have a big, beautiful smile, put a big, beautiful smile on your face.
Uh-huh.
And you know what I mean? Like you bring out the pearly whites, and it works okay for your character.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that situation happening to you in life where you are well known to someone that you're talking to who doesn't know you well, and it's simply incumbent upon you to put a pleasant face on the interaction, no matter whether you're having a good day or a bad day or whatever.
That's correct. And so I can tap into that very easily. And in fact, it's sort of a bonus because a lot of those people that when I'm working the crowd on the show, but we have a huge scene, we have many scenes with lots and lots of extras, they can react to me, and they're probably maybe reacting to me because I'm a TV personality, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. But it really works well. It morphs very well into using that as Selina Meyer reaction audience reactions to Selina Meyer. It works beautifully. But there is a thing that I can definitely use from my life experience in terms of being known that I can put into Selina, and it's great. There's also a lot of what I know in terms of the frustrations of I can definitely identify with her frustrations of being very powerful and powerless at the same time. Number two, nobody says I'm number two. That's not in the lexicon of our American culture. No one boasts that. And yet she's the vice president. So it's a strange mix. I completely identify that as somebody who's, I sell sort of who I am. There are plenty, gobs and gobs of jobs I have not gotten. I wished I'd gotten. I'm frustrated about. There's always something bigger, better, and I get that.
One of the other things that's, I think, a rich parallel between Hollywood and the political world is that in both places there are people who are trying to do something that they really, really believe in. And in Hollywood, it's people trying to create art. Mm-hmm. And in the political world, it's people trying to change the world for the better, change the way the government affects people's lives. Mm-hmm. And both of them face, in doing that, this challenge, which is you also have to get people to approve of you.
It's a nightmare.
And it can be taken away at any moment, right?
That's right.
And that's horrifying.
Yeah, that's right. I quit. I quit. I'm out. Let HBO know. Call somebody. Call my agent. But it's true. It's your heart and soul are very much on the line. So I get it.
What was it like for you when you were cast on Saturday Night Live out of college?
It was...
Did you even know you got cast based on a show you did? Did you know there was casting people coming to the show?
No. The producers from SNL were in the audience, and I was going to Northwestern University at the time, and it was the summer between my junior and senior year. And I was doing a show with Practical Theater Company, and it was a big hit in Chicago. We did not know that the producers from SNL were there. But what you need to understand is that I grew up watching Saturday Night Live, the original cast. And Saturday Night Live in the late 70s was,
it's as big a cultural phenomenon as could exist. And
right.
You were a teenager. You were in high school.
I was its demographic. I stayed up late to watch it. I thought it was there was nothing like it on television, and it was a phenomenon, right? And then this happens, and we get offered this job. And it was very Cinderella going to the ball feeling in the moment. And then, of course, it didn't turn out to be really the ball, but it was a great place to learn a lot very, very quickly. And I certainly did. Certainly did. But in the moment, it was like, oh, my God, my life has just changed completely. And, in fact, it did change completely, but not in ways that I thought it would.
How is it different?
Well, it wasn't being, it wasn't being run when I was there by the same people. It wasn't Lauren running it, and it was not a female-friendly environment at all. And I was extremely naive. I mean, like greener than green about how the show was done, and I figured it was ensemble and we could all work together and come up with sketches, but that is not the case. It was a very, very, very competitive environment. And I didn't go in, I wasn't a stand-up. I was just this 21-year-old actress who could do sketch comedy, And
a lot of people bring to Saturday Night Live
characters,
a sort of passel of characters that they've developed at the Groundlings or Second City or something like that. Stuff that they will, sometimes will literally do in an audition and then do their first week on the show and then will have become a recurring character. They will have like a toolbox that they can always go into and say, well, I've got Fat Marty.
Right. I didn't have a Fat Marty. I had one character who never actually, But even with that, I didn't. I was going to say I had one character that I did on stage that was a big hit, an evangelical woman named April May June, and but I didn't know even with that how to translate that to in front of the camera. I was very, very out of my. I was not. This was not my. I didn't go in with experience. I came in with inexperience, but good intentions, and there were a lot of drugs going on. I wasn't really understanding. I didn't understand that people were, really coked up and stuff, and I didn't get that. So it was like these sketches are 30 pages long, and everyone's laughing, and I couldn't understand why they were laughing. I was really out of my element, but. But I will tell you that I made good friends when I was there. I met really cool people. And, it was trial by fire. I mean, I really learned how to do live television. And that was a great skill to walk out of there with. And it was a hardship. And it was also, fundamentally, I walked out of there thinking, okay, I'm not going to do anything again that isn't fun. And that's so Pollyanna-ish sounding, but I've sort of applied it ever since, and it's worked.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. My guest is Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the Emmy-winning actress who played Elaine Bennis on Seinfeld. Now she stars as Vice President Selina Meyer in the HBO comedy Veep. Let's talk a little bit about Seinfeld.
Sure.
You were on a show, I think, for a couple of years in between Saturday Night Live and Seinfeld, right?
Correct. I did a show for Gary Goldberg's company. It was actually run by Andy Borowitz, and it was called Day by Day. And I did that for 2 years, and that was a show on NBC.
Were you hot off the heels of that show that you did in between when you got the script for the Seinfeld Chronicles? Or I guess it was probably the first couple scripts because your character was added after the pilot.
Yeah, it was shortly thereafter, having made this series, that it got sent to me. And it was from Larry, and he had written this thing. And I remember reading... I think there was very little for me to do in 2 out of the 4 scripts, as I recall. And I remember thinking, yeah, but this is funny. This is a different voice. I hadn't read anything like this ever. The jokes were different. And so I went in not dying to do it, but went in to talk to Larry and meet Jerry. And we hit it off right away. And then we read a scene together, and it felt really real and natural. And so we made a deal over the weekend. And we were shooting actually, it wasn't the pilot. They'd already made the pilot. We were shooting that first episode the next week. It was a lovely, easy thing, frankly.
I want to play a little clip of a scene from a relatively early episode of the show called The Chinese Restaurant. And this was an episode that I think helped define what the show was and could be. It was one of the episodes where the show really found its voice. So in this scene, Elaine, played by you, and Jerry and George are waiting for a table at a Chinese restaurant, and your character, Elaine, is really hungry.
No, it's not fair that people are seated first come, first served. It should be based on who's hungriest. I feel like just walking over there and taking some food off of somebody's plate.
I'll tell you what. There's $50 in it for you if you do it.
What do you mean?
You walk over to that table, you pick up an egg roll, you don't say anything. You eat it, say thank you very much, wipe your mouth, walk away. I give you $50.
What are they going to do?
They won't do anything. In fact, you'll be giving them a story to tell for the rest of their lives.
$50? You'll give me $50?
$50. That table over there for 3 couples.
Okay, I don't want to go over there and do it and then come back here and find out there was some little loophole like I didn't put mustard on it.
No tricks.
Should I do it, George?
For $50? I'll put my face in this soup and blow.
That was a fun night shooting that. My voice has changed. What the hell's going on?
I was actually struck by that listening to it too.
Is that like a funky clip or am I going through puberty?
There's two things. In my mind, there's two really magical elements on Seinfeld that make it Seinfeld. And they are, one is this thing that Larry David has now taken to the nth degree on Curb Your Enthusiasm, another spectacular show that you appeared on, which is he seems to be upset by some societal convention and then decides what would happen if that societal convention was defied. Like, what if the stakes became high enough with that weird little thing that someone broke the rules? The other thing is this rhythm of the show, which you're just finding in this very early episode.
Yeah.
But it became almost like a musical show where I would have laughed at Seinfeld without words, I think. And I wonder if you remember a point where you felt like you understood what the show was about.
Yeah, it was early on when I read the first 3 or 4 scripts. And I think it was the first episode I did. And there was some dialogue about, do you want to go out to eat? Yeah. Where do you want to go? I don't care. I'm not hungry. And I thought, yeah, that's the show for me. Because that's not really, certainly at that time, that was not a conventional sitcom joke. That was very quirky, behavioral, small, strange, and definitely funny. But it had it has a real quality to it that I really identified with.
There's almost no jokes on Seinfeld. I mean, if you compare Seinfeld to, I've been watching a lot of Cheers lately, which is obviously about as good as a show could be as well.
Yeah.
Cheers is full of jokes.
Yes.
And they're usually, I mean, to their credit, they're usually character-driven and so on and so forth, but they're jokes.
Yeah.
And if you watch an episode of Seinfeld, the main joke is usually that these people are too invested in something that's small. Yeah,
that's right. Right. I mean, and the dialogue I just described is evidence of that. Yeah. It's the crazy making minutia of behavior and life. And I just love that kind of humor. I really do. I mean, I even think it's on Veep, you know? It's the same sort of thing. I love it.
Was there a point where you felt like Elaine was part of the show in the way that she could/should be?
Was there a point? A single point I can't really identify. I was definitely always asking Larry and Jerry, could I have more material? I want more material. I really was. I won't lie. But I know that the contest episode was very important from a gender point of view, that she was in that episode. I mean, nowadays with everybody, now I sound like an old woman, but, nowadays everyone's, showing their junk and so on and so forth on television. And so whatever, it's not that big of a deal. But it was a big deal on, in prime time to be talking or I should say not talking, but talking about masturbation was unbelievable. And to be talking about a woman masturbating, unbelievable, without talking about it. And the fact that that Elaine was a part of that contest, I think was very important.
Let's take a listen to a clip from the contest episode of Seinfeld. This episode, obviously, for folks who don't remember it, was about the main characters electing to see who could go the longest without engaging in onanism. And so
stupid.
This might not be appropriate for younger listeners.
I am never doing that again.
What? You mean in your mother's house or all together?
All together.
Give me a break.
Right. You don't think I can?
No chance.
You think you could?
Well, I know I could hold out longer than you.
Care to make it interesting?
Sure, how much?
$100?
You're on.
Wait a second.
Count me in on this.
You?
Yeah.
You'll be out before we get the check.
I want to be in on this too.
Oh, no. That's
all
oranges.
What?
It's a whole different thing because you're a woman.
So what?
It's easier for a woman not to do it than a man. We have to do it. It's part of our lifestyle. It's like shaving.
Oh, that is such baloney. I shave my legs.
Not every day.
I think Elaine was a really interesting character in gender terms because I think it's rare for in a show with a predominantly male cast, for the female character to sort of stand on equal ground with the other cast members, B, for the female character not just to be a romantic interest, and C, for her to do those first two things without, without just being written as without feeling like a character that was written for a man and just happened to be cast with a woman, which is to say Elaine is feminine and feels like a woman, and at the same time is not the romantic target of the rest of the cast, and gets to do real jokes and stand with the other characters. That feels like a really special thing to me.
Well, thanks. I'm so happy you said that. That's a tremendous compliment, and I'm blushing. I think that's really nice. And it's also a compliment to the writing of the show, obviously. But I remember when and Friends was a great show. It came on a few years after we were on. I can't remember exactly, but and it was very funny and so on and so forth. But it was also very will they or won't they, and it was very sexy. And I remember thinking, oh, I haven't been. It didn't occur to me to sort of do that. I don't know. I was just trying to be really funny all the time. That was really my agenda. It wasn't trying to, I wasn't trying to look a certain way to brand myself sort of in a sexy way. I mean, not that there's certainly nothing wrong with doing that necessarily, but I just was very focused on getting the most funny I could out of any moment, So I'm thank you.
There's this thing about I feel like I read a New Yorker article about this that sort of blew my mind about romantic comedy leads, female leads in romantic comedies, where they sort of have to ritually debase themselves at the beginning of the film in order for the audience to like them. Usually, and they have to find a way to do this that keeps their relationship with the audience, which often just means falling down a lot.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, yes, every female romantic comedy lead, especially in a more formulaic romantic comedy, she falls down like 4 times in the beginning of the movie.
Uh-huh.
And otherwise it's because I guess the audience will resent them for
being
having
strong.
a happy ending, being strong, doing something actually funny on purpose, something like that. And one of the things that I really like about Elaine is that it really feels like it feels like comedy choices that you're making on this show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the same kind of comedy choices that anyone else would make if they were just trying to make their character funny.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what I was doing. That's interesting. That's such an interesting point about a romantic comedy. The idea of sort of there has to be a little bit of victim in there in order to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
And Elaine, and one of the things about Elaine as a character is she is basically 0% victim. She will like bludgeon the other characters, both verbally and physically.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. She was a ballsy person, which I love.
Was there like an affirmative decision that the Elaine character would involve a lot of hitting the other characters and pushing the other characters?
No, I think I just did it. I mean, I don't really remember how that evolved, except that I am physical, and I don't know. These guys are bigger than me, and so I just push them around because they were irritating me. And so it sort of worked in the rehearsal process, and then it sort of took on. It had sort of legs of its own, and sort of that sort of get out thing, which is sort of silly, but anyway, it was a part of. Oh God! And like the toupee, that was so much fun to do. That pulling of the toupee off of Jason and in that scene, and I don't know, it just all of that stuff. A lot of it came out of the rehearsal process, and then they started to write to it too.
And there's something great. It made me. I was thinking about it because I was thinking about Veep, and Veep is so much a show about power, and about basically about status changing in an instant, left and right, with every interaction with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking that I think one of the things that's so funny about Elaine on Seinfeld is that you are smaller than your castmates.
Yeah.
And so the idea of you physically dominating them is just funny every time.
Yeah, because I played somebody who knew that she could physically dominate them and really did a lot. So that's fun too.
I saw you somewhere say that you thought one of the corollaries between your character on Veep, the vice president, and Elaine was rage.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what did you see as being the rage in Elaine? Maybe it's a testament to what a pleasant presence you are on screen, but when I think Elaine, I don't necessarily think rage.
Well, her life isn't really going the way that she thinks that she deserves to have it go. And she's hanging around with these losers, and it's exhausting. There was a line, and maybe you guys can find it and I'm trying to remember. It might have been in the Pinter episode, when the show plays backwards. But there's a line that she says, and we've howled and howled about it. The writers, I just remember all of us dying.
I can't spend the rest of my life coming into this stinking apartment every 10 minutes to pore over the excruciating minutia of every single daily event.
In other words, she's spinning her wheels with these guys, and it's enraging. It's enraging. She should have a solid career. She should either marry Jerry or not and move away. George and Kramer, come on, what is she doing with her life?
But what's great about that is that she also just has these moments of ineptitude that's every bit as grand as the other character's ineptitude. I mean, I'm sure people ask you to do that horrible dance.
They do.
The episode where you do the horrible dance.
Yeah, they do. And I don't. I do not do that. That's enough of that. I can't even watch it
Not even when you're at home alone with your husband.
Why would I do that? Why would I dance like that?
Did you think was a choreographer brought on to increase the indignity of that dance? Was it sui generis? Did you create it out of whole cloth?
I created it. Yeah, I did.
Did you have to did you stand at home in front of a full-length mirror and just think which of these dance moves looks the worst?
Yeah, I remember my mom was staying with us at the time visiting, and I came downstairs to the kitchen and I said, okay, which looks worse? I had a couple of options. And they all voted for the one that you saw. I mean, we couldn't, I'm not I'm not a professional dancer, in case you hadn't surmised that already. But I mean, in other words, but that said, I can dance a little bit, and so they couldn't play the music when I was doing that, because if they played music, all of those herky jerky moves, it would be hard to fight the rhythm of the music. But fight against it. I mean, because it needs to be not in sync with anything.
You would accidentally start dancing properly.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, kind of, yes.
You would be moved by the spirit of the actual dance.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. You're listening to my interview with Julia Louis-Dreyfus from 2013. She's a star of the HBO show Veep. It kicked off its 6th season this week. This is something that that we talked about very briefly about Veep, but I want to talk about it a little bit more. That relationship between you and your staff is really one of the central elements of the show.
Yeah.
That when you are the vice president, you are responsible for so much, even if that's just shaking hands with people and knowing what their child's name is.
Yeah.
That there's no way you can do it without being completely reliant on other people. And it sort of reminds me a little bit of like Artie, the producer from the Larry Sanders Show, in his relationship with Larry Sanders on that show. There's just this thing where it is a person that is needed. You need the support of this group of people. And so when they are failures, it is particularly painful.
Yeah, and when you yourself, as the leader of the group, is a failure, it's like a triple-decker cake or sandwich or something. I mean, it's a lot of layers. But the vice president's office functions like that, and of course the president's office functions like that, and then some, and then some. But it really the efficiency and the importance of the vice president's office. The role of vice president really does hinge on that relationship with the president. And, of course, she has a terrible relationship with the president. Yeah, and by the way, this is also true in my experience in the research I did in Congress as well. There are these people that are so devoted to their senator. For instance, I had this one scheduler for one very prominent senator say that she slept with her BlackBerry on the pillow next to her every night. And she said that with great pride. And I thought, that's incredible. I mean, she has to, because if he's traveling or, she has to be available to him 24/7. And she is expected to be. And, important issues hang in the balance. And so this is how it works with our staff on the show, except that they're, nowhere near as competent as that particular schedule was with that particular senator.
Veep, like the other shows that Armando Iannucci has made, is probably has some of the densest language, as well as some of the most profane language that's ever been on television. And you've worked a lot in front of an audience on television, which requires a rhythm that involves waiting for laughter.
Right.
I mean, one of the amazing things about Seinfeld is that you were able to maintain that rhythm while there was an audience laughing at it. And the rhythm of that show.
Yeah.
How do you had a rehearsal period before the first season, which is very unusual in television. But, how do you even just say the number of words you need to say and have it be something coherent? Give each of them actual meaning.
Well, I mean, that's where first of all, they do have meaning, so you just have to find the truth in it, and then you just do it. I mean, that's your job as an actor, I suppose. But it is very different doing comedy without an audience. And there's a lot to be said for doing it with an audience and a lot to be said for not doing it with an audience. I mean, and I love both formats. It was an adjustment for me initially to do episode after episode without an audience, because it's really divine to get a laugh. It's a incredible high, and it's a wonderful way of connecting with the people you're trying to entertain. But that said, there is something that happens when you don't have an audience. There is a kind of reality that you can get into which you can't with an audience. And but I will tell you that after so many, almost after every take, I look around to see, are our camera operators laughing? I love to get that feedback. I really do.
Is there something that you said, and if it's profane, you can say the profanities, we'll just bleep them out on the radio, that was particularly amazing on the show, that just stuck in your head? There's these bits of language that are unreal on the program.
Yeah, I mean, when I loved, from season 1, I loved, that's like trying to use a croissant as a dildo. Let me spell it out for you. It doesn't do the job, and it makes a mess. And I really, really, really enjoyed that. But who wouldn't? It's a great image. Oh.
Well, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on Bullseye. It was really great to have you on the show.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you so much.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus, she's the best. Catch her in the 6th season of Veep now. It airs Sunday nights at 10:30 on HBO.